not at all. I do not believe there is any member of the public, but Mrs. Miller, if you could unmute everyone for a second, just in case I'm missing anyone. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment? Okay, we can go back to muting then, and we'll move forward into the contracts. Mr. Dahlberg, if you would walk us through the contracts, please.
You can hear me, Dr. Bolton?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So contracts tonight, we have 5 contracts. The first is the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit for shared services for students, for special education students' needs that happen to be educated in a school that's in Montgomery County. So we have to have an agreement with Montgomery County IU, just like we do with Bucks County IU. So, and I believe this particular agreement is for one student at a particular school that we need to take care of. The second contract is the Crowd Pleasers DJ services for North Middle School for next year. I believe it's 6 different events that they set a contract up for the year, 5 dances, and I believe 1 8th grade picnic where they have a DJ, and that the cost is paid for by the students in their activity account funds. The next contract is the Music Theater International contract. This is a middle school contract for next year's school play at Central Middle School. And there's the same contract that we see each year, 3 different times, one for each middle school. This just happens to be Central's getting things lined up for next year already for their play, which is next spring. So, and the excuse me, the cost on that one is $818.50. The next contract is with the Bucks County Intermediate Unit Technology Pool Council. This, I believe, would be our 3rd year doing the Technology Pool Council, and our district cost is $807.53 of the total $13,200, and the cost is shared proportionally by all the school districts in our county plus the intermediate unit. And this has proven to be a very worthwhile endeavor for us. We not only get our questions answered from a technology legal standpoint, but we get the answers to everybody's questions. So if someone has a question in the Chamonix, question goes in, the answer comes back, the answer goes to all the tech directors throughout the district. And so we reap the benefits of learning from everyone else's questions as we move forward each day in technology. So, and the last contract is the initial documents for next year's Insight Financial Services Agreement. This is the lease program for the high school one-to-one program. The same company that we've used the last 2 years. If you see on the second page, the total cost for the one-to-one laptops plus 330 faculty laptops that are due for replacement is plus the soft costs, total cost $869,005. The annual payment $229, and if you times that by 4, it's actually about $850,000. So our cost is for the 4-year lease is actually less than the cost of the equipment. So, and we've had very, very good track record with these folks since we brought them on a few years ago. So they've been very helpful. That's it for the 5 contracts.
Anyone have any questions about any of those 5?
I do have one, Dr. Bolton. The Crowd Pleasers and the Music Theater International. Given the uncertainty of next year, do we have any out? Is there any out of either of these? Should we not be in session?
Mr. Dahlberg, I do not know the answer to that in terms of if the events do not happen, does the contract speak about those options? Because if not, we should address that.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll check on that for both of those.
Okay.
Okay.
Mrs. Banis Clemens, are you okay if we move on then to the student activity guide? We'll let you jump in. Start steering the bus.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties. Yes, Sean, if you want to go into the student activity guide.
Okay. So what we're looking for here is some adjustments to the student activity guide. As we have laid out there, because the kids are not here, so it's making it very difficult in order to finish the year up for things that need to be taken care of. So basically the first item takes away the requirement for just meeting minutes for the rest of this year, and allows for meeting minutes or written approval from the officers of the student activity fund. And mainly where we're seeing some activity in the student activity fund right now is the senior class, trying to get things finished and moving for their end of year events and so forth. And the activity account that does the large fundraiser for the Four Diamonds needs to make the payment to the Four Diamonds from the fundraiser. So some things like that need to be finished up. So that's what we're looking for there. The second item is if a student activity fund has more than 25% balance at the end of the year of that year's revenue, we would require a written request to come to the board to carry over more than 25%. And we would like to take that language out this year because, again, the kids aren't here, and whatever money they have at the end of this fiscal year will carry over for them for next year. Of course, the only exception to that would be the senior class, which has to finish up. And then the last one is the annual purpose statement that the clubs complete, and usually they submit that at the same time they're doing their request to carry over. So we would just not have the clubs that requirement for this year. So those are the three things that regulations that we just like to ease up on this year since the kids aren't here, and just have things carry over. So.
Sean, are they able to still meet virtually to make those kinds of decisions? Do they still have the opportunity to be part of that process?
As I understand, the ones that are meeting as the senior class kids officers are meeting with the senior class principal to make plans for the use of their funds. But other than that, as far as I know, those groups aren't meeting.
Are there some other groups that it might be helpful for them to meet as far as planning and things? I know like the junior class even a lot of times is planning the year ahead for the events for the following year. And, you know, some other clubs, it might be beneficial, you know, for clubs that where it makes sense. Obviously there's some clubs where it wouldn't make sense for them to continue to meet, but I just wasn't sure if, you know, that could be looked at and maybe see what makes sense for some of them to not get behind on things.
Sure.
And I do know that the house principals are meeting with their executive councils in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, as well as 12th, just to check in, make sure kids are doing okay, as well as talking a little bit about the summer and the fall activities if they're able to happen. So there are some of those conversations going on. Mr. Dauber, can you talk a little bit about the senior class funds since there is a chance this year that there may be some funds used towards events later than we would normally do for the senior class, and how we're going to be able to handle that and still take care of the senior class.
Yeah, that's another issue that Amy and I were discussing, and we actually thought it'd be best to bring it back to you next month once the senior class has a better idea of when and what they're doing, so that I actually had something that I could concretely tell you. But yeah, the senior class normally has to have all of its money either spent or a decision to where that money's going by the end of their school year. Of course, that is going to be very difficult this year, as we're trying to give them more time to maybe have an event or something like that later on. So we would need a little bit of the easing of the regulations on that class, which is okay to do with board approval, but they can't, the regulations do not allow us to let them have the money for an extended period of time after graduation. So we couldn't just let it there for them to have a fifth-year class reunion or something like that. That it has to be technically used as when they're in school or as a part of their school event. And if we have to delay their school events into the summer a month or so, it would be fine. But we just can't let them keep it past a reasonable amount of time. So.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from anyone? Okay. Okay, next is the review of the finance RFP bid results.
Okay, we have a couple of different bids here that we're taking care of and back already, so we'll get hopefully the board to approve those. The first is the brake parts bid. You can see the list of all the different brake parts. We had 3 responses to the bid. Most of the items go, the lowest bidder was a company called Moyer. The second company was Moyer, and we also had IEH Auto, which bid but did not receive any of the low prices. So the requested bid approval is are the prices that are highlighted in yellow. The second one is the engine, transmission, and parts list. Again, this is a rather large list. The low bidders are again in yellow. We have 5 bidders, or 5 different bidders on various items here, and you can see the low bidders in yellow. The third one is the vehicle battery bids. We had 2 bidders, Warehouse Battery and Lowe and Moyer. Warehouse Battery had the lowest price on all the items that were bid. The next list is our fluid bids. And these are all for the transportation department, of course. And the requested items are there in yellow, or the low bids are in yellow. We had 3 companies that replied to us on this bid. And then we also have the transportation radio maintenance bid. We had 3 companies again, and Land, company called Land Mobile Corporation was the low bidder on all those radio items that were out to bid. And the last list is a student list. This is the student assignment books, which we do a RFP each year, bid for these. We have elementary and middle school student books, and the cost is there for each of those. And these student activity books we use a lot less now. Now that we have the laptops for all the students. But there are a number, just a certain number of kids that still get these books. So, all right. And then we have some bid results from the facility RFPs that went out.
Let's wait a second, Mr. Dalbert. Are there any questions on those, the finance ones, the RFPs?
It's just kind of a curiosity on my part. Is the school big books, is that the same provider as last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because it's only one bidder, so I figured that they're probably the same one. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dalbert. We ready for the facility ones then now?
Sure.
I will. So the first one on the facilities is the lamps and ballasts RFP. We had 2 bids, actually 3 bids here: Schrader, Real Lighting Incorporated, and From Electric. And the lowest bid was Schrader at $18,286.17. They're also on CoStar, so we got bids from them, and they are actually also those prices are actually also covered under CoStar. So the second list is the uniform RFP. This year we only got 1 response from Clemens Uniform, $13,162. And the third one is the HVAC filter bid. We received 2 bids: Tri-Dim Filters and Brook Air. And Tri-Dim came in at $21,985.71 as the lowest bidder. And they are also on CoStar. So those are the 3 from the facilities department.
Are there any questions or comments on any of those?
No.
No? Okay.
Right.
All right, then next we'll go over the 2020-21 lunch and breakfast prices for next year.
Yeah, the lunch prices, you can see the current prices are listed there, and we also have the 2021 requested prices. Elementary lunch and middle and high school lunch, we'd like to increase by 10 cents. And the elementary breakfast by 25 cents, and middle school breakfast by 25 cents. The middle school, the breakfast prices haven't been increased for as long as Gina has been here, which is some 13 years. And the middle school breakfast and the high school breakfast, is interesting that they were differently priced, because it's the exact same amount of food that the middle school and the high school kids get. So from a cost standpoint for us versus a revenue standpoint, we were actually losing on the middle school breakfast price. So we want to get that up to match what the cost is. So.
Okay. Any questions or comments about this one?
Nope.
Bill, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, you unmuted, so I thought you had something for me.
Click of the finger, a little click happy here.
All right, well then, next we'll move on to the general fund budget, technology.
Okay, so we'll turn it over to Diane.
Okay, very good. All right, I'm actually going to put my video on too, so I'm not just a talking black box. There we go.
So first, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Should we all sing happy birthday to Diane real quick?
Oh, please no. Oh, please, birthday.
I don't think
Happy
so.
birthday.
Happy
Well, thank
birthday,
you for
Diane.
Don't think you want me to sing.
Yeah, me either, but happy birthday.
Thank you. And what a better way to spend my birthday evening than with you fine folks, right?
Cinco de Mayo birthday. You have like a really
I
festive
have a great
day.
birthday. Mrs. Cullen, it is an awesome birthday, except for this year. It's been a little bit of a bummer, but usually it's a great birthday. So thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm going to share my screen out here.
Okay.
While we're waiting, am I missing something? I can't look at the agenda and the meeting at the same time, or is there a way to do that?
You have to minimize your Zoom boxes so that you can only see 4 or 5 people at a time.
Okay, all right.
Right now, it won't be possible because Diana's taken over the screen. So
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Got 2 monitors.
I'm not that savvy, so I'll use my phone.
But you're outside. It's very nice. So, okay. So thank you for having me here this evening. And I want to say just a couple things before I actually get into the budget itself. So I've been I've been on these board and committee meetings since we've closed due to the COVID-19 crisis. And I've heard some really, really kind words of thanks to the technology department from the board and the administration. So I want to say how proud I am of my staff for the work that they've been doing to support the students, the staff, and even the parents during this time. We found ourselves, just as everybody else did, challenged with coming up with a new method of support very quickly. We kind of went into our remote support. We're using some different tools to try and help people remotely. And when we can't help them remotely, we have appointments at the high school 2 days a week. It's by appointment only, and it's kind of like a drive-up presentation. So they drive up, they drop their computer off at a table, we take it in, we try and fix it. If we can't, we just swap it out. So as contactless as we can do it. The community's been very appreciative of what we've been doing. Most people have been very patient. So I want to say that I appreciate that as well. But I also want to take a moment to thank you guys, the present board, the past boards, and the administration for the support that you have and the priority that you've given to technology in the district. So you've supported the upkeep of the infrastructure, which is the backbone of the network. And because you've allowed us to keep that up to date, we can now have those 7,000 plus students, plus support staff, plus the teachers, all online at one time without overtaxing our network. You've also supported the one-to-one initiative, which allows every student from grades 6 through 12 to have their own device. So we always knew that was important from a curriculum standpoint, and now this has given it a whole new level of importance. So without that support in the past, we wouldn't have been in the position that we were in to be able to switch so quickly to this online distance learning model. So I thank you for that too. You've also supported software initiatives like Canvas, and Canvas is where we are delivering our content online now while everyone's at home. You've supported ClassLink, which is your single sign-on, which is our single sign-on, which has allowed everybody to be able to use the same dashboard they were using at school at home. So especially for the little ones, I think it's been really invaluable that the parents who are now trying to teach their little ones at home, they know what all their passwords are and they don't have to be bogged down with that. So, and the list goes on, but I just wanted to take this moment before I get into the 2021 technology budget just to say thank you so much for your support. And I think, you know, the fruits of it have really kind of, it's kind of showing exactly what your support and your understanding and consideration and prioritizing technology in the district has done for everybody. So I sort of just wanted to say that as a thank you back to everybody. All right, so I'm going to go through the 2021 budget by major objects, by the categories. That's the way I generally do this. So I'll go through each of the major categories as is outlined by the PA chart of accounts, And then if you have questions, we'll just stop after each slide and I can answer the questions hopefully. So we're going to begin with the 300s, which are the professional, purchase professional and technical services. And what this includes is a big chunk of this is our Microsoft Campus Agreement. So when I say the Microsoft Campus Agreement, I mean everything to do with Microsoft. It's our O365 licensing for all our staff and all our students. It's our server licensing. It's our SQL licensing. It's anything to do with Microsoft. We belong to a consortium through the Bucks IU, and they're the ones who actually negotiate this contract for us to get us a better price than we would be able to get if we were negotiating it on our own. Another chunk of this money here is our network and consulting and support, network consulting and support. So this covers outside technical services that are contracted for higher level networking functions and configurations. We use the company called JLR as one of our network consultants. We also get network consulting from the Bucks County IU. So we had the BCIU come in this year to help us when we set up our new backup software, Beam. So they came in and they helped us with that because they have the expertise that we just don't always possess on staff. So when we need that little extra help, this is where that money is coming from. The Technology Pool Consortium, Mr. Dahlberg just explained a little bit about what that means to the district. It's the technical solicitor that we can all, when I say we can, collectively throughout the county, can ask technical questions and get the legal answer, because sometimes technical law is very different than other law. So that's why we belong to that Technology Pool Consortium. This also has our help desk in here, and the help desk has been invaluable through this time, because not only do we have help desk tickets coming in from staff as normal, but now we have students and we have parents using it as well. So the help desk that we contract with has been really helpful, allowing so many different people to either be calling in or sending emails in. So it's been working out very well. E-rate consultant, we do have an E-rate consultant that we contract with to help keep all the nuances of the E-rate filing straight. E-rate is a very complex system to navigate through. So we do have a consultant who helps us out with that to make sure that we have, you know, all our I's dotted and T's crossed, so we're not leaving any money on the table when we do apply for the reimbursement. And then I have staff training and development in here as well. So if my staff is going to any conferences or they're doing any certifications, the money comes out of here as well. So you can see that there's actually a little bit of a decrease here from last year. We keep weaning away at the network consulting and support fees. So that's where some of the decrease came in here. And I think that's about it that goes into the 300s. Are there any questions on this portion of the budget? Okay, moving along. So pretty much the lion's share of the budget is the 400s, which is our purchased property services. So this is where all our leasing comes into. So, and you can see, you know, we take out a 4-year lease for the high school student laptops. You can see that this year, our lease payment that we talked about with the contracts, I tried to break that down. So you're seeing it broken down between the class of 2024, the administrator laptop lease, and the elementary teacher laptop lease. So the elementary teachers have had their computers for 4 years now, so it's time to refresh those computers. So we go with a 4-year lease on the, not only on the student, but on the staff and the administrator laptops as well, because after 4 years, we find that the components are starting to wear out. The battery life gets down to pretty minimal. So people have to recharge all the time. 4 years ago, we went with an i3 processor. This year, we go with an i5 processor. We were able to, I think 4 years ago, we had a 128 gig hard drive. Now we have a 256 gig hard drive in each of the computers that we'll be ordering. It's newer technology as far as the disk drive. It's an SSD drive, so there's no real moving parts in it. They're also coming through now with the new USB-C port. So by the time we get through that 4th year, we really are seeing some improvements from 4 years. Industry standard is 4 to 5 years to keep a laptop, and I think in our environment, the way the teachers use them, the 4 years is about as good as we can get out of them. The rest of the leasing in this 400s are the middle school laptop lease, so that will come due next year. And then we have leased some of the STEM laptops as well. And the STEM laptops are in the middle schools, and they're in the STEM labs because they need a beefier machine than the student machines. And then the network switches were in lease year 4 of 5, and then we'll do that network refresh again, which I'm so looking forward to. So there's been a slight increase here of $14,022, but pretty much on par with what we spent last year. Any questions here?
No. Thank you, Mrs. Miller, for the explanation on the laptops. And I think, you know, to boil it down, what you're saying is we're getting faster devices for the kids.
And for the, not only for the kids, but for the staff as well,
Yeah,
Mr. Krause.
Yeah,
Yes.
the staff as well as the students. The solid state drive makes a huge difference
Oh, yeah.
in the speed. So thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Rice, you unmuted. Would you like to?
I was just going to say thanks again because I believe that those details, perfect. I like it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
The second part of the 400s, the purchase property services, are the maintenance contracts. So when I say the maintenance contracts, it's the contracts on VMware, which is our virtual, it's the virtual server farm. So we have to pay maintenance on VMware. We have to pay maintenance on Barracuda, which is our email archiver. We pay maintenance for the iPads. We use a mobile device manager called Jamf. Jamf did have a price increase, so each license, there was a cost increase this year, plus we have more iPads as well. So, and then the other piece here is computer maintenance repairs not covered by warranty or ADP. So I actually should have put warranty or ADP here. So there's an increase of $17,100 in here, and that's coming from the increase of the Jamf, of the iPad licenses, the additional iPad licenses, and then moving more money into this computer maintenance and repairs line item within the purchase property services here, and that's what is causing a little bit of an increase here. Any questions on this slide? It's all good stuff, isn't it? I promised you pictures. I'm sorry, I don't have pictures. This next slide just is a combination of the previous two slides. So overall, this portion of the budget, there was an increase of $31,000 here. And again, I think I just went through why we had a little bit of an increase here. The 500 category is the other purchase services, and this is really our internet provider transport. So we contract with in two different ways. So there's the regional wide area network, which is the Arwen, and we get that service from Bucks County IU. And again, we're part of the consortium there, so we get our internet through the IU. And then we have the internet service between buildings. So it's our own fiber, but it's not our own fiber, it's leased fiber, I should say. And that's our WAN, or our WAN, our wide area network. So we just entered into a new contract. We had to go out for, we went out for bids for a new contract for the fiber. We are staying with our same provider, and that's Crown Castle, and they are the fiber provider. So we're pretty much staying status quo. We are increasing our bandwidth in between our network operations center and our middle schools. So we're going from 1 to 2 gig. So that's where you're seeing an increase here of $9,800, because we did increase the bandwidth we already we've got 10 gig going into the high school. So we just increased going to the middle schools up to 2 gig, and we did the analysis, and 2 gig is fine, but we thought we would upgrade that a little bit. This also covers or has in it our general property and liability insurance, and that's just something Mr. Dahlberg tells me I have to put in there. So I'm not quite sure what that's for, but Mr. Dahlberg gives me the number and I put that in there every year. And then there's travel for technicians between the buildings here too, and that's gone way down thanks to transportation. They've given us some really cool soccer mom looking vans. So the techs can travel around in those really nice looking green minivans, and they say IT 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the guys have a lot of fun with that. So, but there is still some travel between buildings for the technicians. We don't have one van for everybody, but I'm very grateful for those vans, definitely. Any questions on the 500s on other purchase services? Okay. So the 600s are software and supplies, and this is a very muddy category to me. I don't like the way the state does this. So Sean, if you can tell them, I just don't like the way they do this. But this is kind of like a catch-all. So it's software, supplies, and technology is considered a supply in here. So what you're going to see in this also very hefty portion of the budget is the annual subscription fees for many of the software products that the district uses. So it's PowerSchool, and it's the PowerSchool Student Information System. It's PowerSchool Online Registration System. It's PowerSchool Financial System Annual Subscription and Support. So those top 3 lines there are all owned by PowerSchool, and PowerSchool owns other pieces of software as well, but they're not in the technology budget. Board Docs comes out of here. You know, that we've been using for, I guess it's 4 years now, which seems to work out very well for everybody. It's much better than that SharePoint, which we all didn't like. ClassLink annual subscription, and that's the single sign-on that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation here, that has just proven to be a game changer in many ways, especially during this at-home time, and especially with the youngsters. I think we sent home a QR code with all the little guys, and they can just, you know, put their QR code up to the camera, and it logs them in, so they don't have to fumble with all their different passwords. That is a split cost with curriculum, so we do split that 50-50 with curriculum. I still have the classroom management software budgeted in here that we've talked about now for 1.5 years, and we are so close, and then this virus hit. So I'm still hoping that at some point next year, even if it's for half a year, we can get that classroom management software rolling, at least in the middle schools in some capacity. So I did leave it in there as a budget line item, and I'm still kind of crossing my fingers that at some point next year we can get that in there. The middle school technology laptops are also in this 600s. Again, like I said, it kind of covers software and supplies, and laptops are actually considered supplies. So this year we had 6th, 7th, and 8th grade machines in the middle schools, and again, the students were able to take them home. So the 8th grade machines will kind of age out. And when the 8th grade machines age out, we need the new 6th graders to come in. So we'll be purchasing laptops for the 6th grade class. We're going to take what's usable from the 8th graders, and we're going to push some of them down into the elementary schools as well. So we should be able to get another year out of them, is the hope. We'll go through them and we'll kind of weed out the ones that we have service records on that maybe they're not holding up so great. But the plan is to push some of them down into the elementary schools. And also we have a whole kind of support group that we want to provide laptops to, the TAs and the PCAs. We're looking at giving some of the support staff who haven't had, or well, they're paraprofessionals, I guess, haven't had laptops. I'm hoping that I can use some of those as well for some of these other staff members to utilize them, so we can maybe get another year out of them as well. As far as at the elementary level, the principals have requested iPads. The elementary is so heavily invested in Seesaw, and the principals are saying they don't have their own device for Seesaw. So I have a line item for iPads for the principals. And we're also looking at pumping some additional iPads into K through 2. Will be the device of choice at the elementary school, K through 2. We're looking at utilizing the laptops more for the curriculum, grades 3 through 5. So again, there would be some additional iPads coming in at the elementary level. Then the rest of this software and supplies is for projectors. We're always replacing projectors, Wi-Fi adapters, so that the elementary teachers in particular can display from their, or project from their iPad wirelessly onto the projector. It's any kind of docking stations, it's the consumables, it's office supplies, so it's going to be cleaning supplies this year. So you can see that there's been a little bit of a decrease this year, $11,000 decrease. The middle school class coming in, the 6th grade class is a little bit lower, is a little bit smaller this year. So that's really where a lot of the decrease is coming in here. That was a lot of words coming out of me. Any questions on this one?
I just want to provide a thank you to the board for supporting the online registration subscription, as well as Dr. Durr and her department for moving to that over the last couple of years. That has been invaluable to us as we've thought about how to do registration in this new environment. And it hasn't been seamless, but it has been a lot better than districts who were relying on paper and pencil to be able to go back and forth and use the online system. So a huge thank you for that.
So what ratio will you be looking at for K-2 students to iPads?
So we're looking, so we've spent a lot of time on this plan. So what we're looking at is having 12 iPads in each. So I can't really give you a ratio. So what the plan is to have 12 iPads in each classroom. That way the teacher always has them available. Then we're going to have a cart to be shared among one grade level. So in other words, if they have 12 in their classroom and they have 30 in their classroom, there'll be a cart of 20, we're actually saying a cart of 24, so they can supplement and create an entire grade, an entire class. Does that make sense? So it's not so much a ratio, it's going to be a different model of spreading them out differently so that the teachers have them available all the time in their classroom for when they want them. And then we'll supplement that 12 in each classroom with this grade level cart. So when they do want to do a full class activity, they'll be able to grab the cart.
So is this something that's going to be coming through for discussion in the technology committee?
So it's really just the way we're distributing. So there's not going to be a lot more, there won't be so many more devices. It's just going to be, right now, every elementary school does it a little bit differently. So we're going to model it, and we've had, discussion with principals involved of the model to actually just make it consistent across the elementary schools. And that should help in many different ways. The teachers will know where the iPads are. The teachers will know how to sign out the iPads for when they need them. And it should cut down a little bit on who has them, where do I have to go to get them, who's got the cart today. So that's what we're really trying to put our arms around a little bit.
But right now, we're not even close to 12 a classroom, are we?
So
Plus
yeah, when we,
the coverage.
So, but we're talking now K1 and 2, where 3, 4, and 5 will be more dependent on the laptops rather than on the iPads. So if we do the numbers for K1 and 2, we're pretty close to be able to pull this model off.
Currently, the distribution is K through 5, and there are iPads scattered throughout. We met with some teachers and some administrators to kind of do some planning about what would the model be classroom to classroom, so there'd be some level of consistency, because currently there's not. And so iPads, laptops. And so we looked at the curriculum, and from a curriculum standpoint, the iPads are more appropriate for the primary, K through 2, laptops more appropriate 3 through 5. And so when we looked at usage at the primary level, there are two main usage. One is the small groups that we talked about, where the teacher has 4 or 5 students in front of them, and they are working on an app with the teacher while the rest of the class is engaged in some other center. The other piece is then in the creation. And when we talked about creation at the primary level, it is primarily done in pairs, which is where the 12 came from. Most of our K through 2 classrooms have 24 or fewer students in it. There are some that have more than that, but for the most part, they are at about those numbers. And that would allow for when the teachers want to do a student paired creation activity, they would have the devices in their room. Right now, the issue is it's holding up the curriculum because they have to arrange to sign them out when they want to do those types of things. They need to go to the 4th grade and say, can I have your 12 iPads? Go to the library and say, can I borrow the cart that has iPads in it? This way, we're prioritizing the use to K through 2. The laptop use will be prioritized 3 through 5. The other grade levels have access to the others, but they'll have to sign those out. But primarily, that's where the curriculum is. And so it's not a lot of new devices. It is some new devices, but it's not a lot of new devices. It's just reallocating them to different levels.
So I just feel like when we've had this discussion before in technology committee meetings, there's been a lot of concerns raised by numerous board members about about putting too much of the electronics in the elementary schools. And so I feel like we're, by moving those, by taking, you're really doubling the amount of resources because you're moving it to half as many kids. And then, I like that you're recycling and using the laptops and, coming down from the 8th grade. It just concerns me that when in the elementary level, having too much of the technology for those little kids, all of the studies have shown that it's too much technology for kids that age, and as well as what the CDC says, there's just concerns about that. So.
And if you remember earlier this year, we had that committee with Dr. Scheid, who worked on those types of curriculum expectations at all levels, at the elementary level, not just K through 2. This is not a change in the curriculum. This is not a change in terms of when the teachers were currently looking to utilize them. There will be some ease, so we will have to measure the increased use if there is some, because there's a more ease of use. So that's something that Dr. Rabarczyk and Dr. Moyer can be looking at in terms of how it's used in the curriculum piece. But we have established those expectations for our teachers, that our expectation is at the elementary level. This is not a one-to-one environment. It's not intended to be. Mm-hmm. Students should not regularly be on their equipment, except when it's appropriate to the curriculum.
I have a question. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. There was a 4th section added to my son's school this year, and each teacher pulled from their iPad in his grade level, from their iPad stock, and had to provide him with that teacher. I think they had, I never followed back up to see if they got more iPads, but apparently they were getting more iPads then, so for the teacher that came in, so then they get their extra iPad or 2 that they had lent out to the teacher so she'd have some in her classroom back. Is there a plan in place, since the primary grades seem to be when they're more likely to have an extra section sort of pop up in mid-August due to enrollment? Is there a plan in place for if there is an extra section added on to get 12 additional iPads for that classroom, or would be the expectation be for teachers to have to pull from their resources to provide for their new grade partner?
Yeah, the initial reaction to that would be there are going to be carts of iPads at the grade levels. And so the initial thing for the teacher to make sure there isn't a blip in curriculum usage is that cart, 12 of those from that cart would be utilized to that new section. We then would have to work from a budget standpoint to see whether we replace the 12 on that cart or whether we figure out a way to bring some from the library or those types of pieces. But the classroom itself would have access to 12 and the other teachers would not have to share because of the new model.
Okay, thank you.
So Mrs. Dolan is trying to get in, but it's giving her some message saying that she needs to be let in.
I just
I got
let her
in.
in.
Okay,
It just
Thank
popped
you.
up on my screen. Sorry.
perfect.
You
Thanks.
should be in. Okay, any other questions about this? Joan, are you trying, or were you just trying to get Katie in?
Oh, no, I just, I did want to say that, you know, I hope that, like Megan was saying, with the extra devices, and I'm glad that Dr. Bolton, that you reminded us about the committee that set the expectations, that, you know, just because there's more devices there, maybe now all of them can be doing something for like 15 minutes and then they don't do it again for the rest of the day. I don't know. I don't know what the numbers are, but I do hope that they continue to stick with meeting those expectations of not having too much screen time. So that's, I just wanted to say.
And I'm sure Dr. Robarchuk will continue to emphasize that with the elementary principals as we move to the new model.
And thank you for jumping in there and explaining all of that, Dr. Bolton. Okay. All right. So, were there any other questions on this screen, on this slide? I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So the next slide is, it was the 700, the properties. There was a line item in there for technology infrastructure. That account is no longer being used. So it looks like there is a $25,000 decrease there. The infrastructure, and that's the last slide that I'll talk to, is coming out of capital expense. So there is nothing in here under 700. So it's a $25,000 decrease in here. So that leads me to the grand total here, and basically it's a decrease of $1,300, $1,400 here. So you know, pretty much a 0% increase / decrease for the 2021 school year as far as the regular budget. So are there any other questions on the budget itself?
I just want to say again, Diane, for the second year in a row, I just want to clarify this. That means there are going to be more devices throughout the district, increased infrastructure, but decreased costs. Is that what I just heard?
That's what you heard, correct.
All right, I just wanted to make sure.
So yes. So until we get to the next slide here. So because there's always that next slide, right?
Way to bury the lead.
So can I just quit now? Quit while I'm ahead. So under capital expenses is where some of this network infrastructure money is going to come out of. One of the big projects under E-rate this year is increasing the number of wireless access points at the elementary schools. So currently we have, let me grab those numbers here. Currently we have 117 access points across the 7 middle or elementary schools, and we're adding an additional 153. And what that will do is just increase the wireless access. So no matter whose room you're in, you'll be able to get on the wireless. We're also making sure that conference rooms, rooms that are currently don't have any access points in them, that we're going to add these additional access points. So this is all E-rateable. It comes with a nice price tag on it, but we also have an anticipated E-rate reimbursement of $112,000 or $113,000. So under E-rate, we are a 50% school. So we're able to use a nice chunk of our budget, our E-rate budget, and we'll get that as, back at some point throughout the year. E-rate's been extended. This was really the last year, quote unquote, for E-rate. So it has been extended They're coming up with some different rules for next year. We should actually end up getting more money, I think, under some of the new calculations. They're also going to do the budgeting a little bit differently. The way they budget E-rate now is it's based on number of students at each school. And you have to say, okay, I'm going to put 50 new access points at Bedminster Elementary, and that comes out of Bedminster's pot. And I guess they figured that was a little bit silly. It's district-wide. So they're going to put all that money into one pot now. So instead of saying you can only use X amount at, you know, each school, they're going to say, Penridge, you have this amount of money to spend. And as long as you meet the criteria, and there's very stringent criteria for E-rate, you can utilize the money. So I don't know how many of you really understand E-rate when I throw that word around, because I never had an idea of what it was before I got, you know, into this type of position here. So just so you have an understanding of what I mean when I say E-rate. So it is federal monies. One of the other things that we're going to do this summer is the conversion of SIP trunks for the phone redundancy district-wide. So as you may be aware, sometimes we lose one of our current circuits for phones coming in to the district. And you'll see that we'll send something out that says, please call, you know, one of the receptionists, and they'll transfer you around. And that's because we have 2 circuits right now coming into they're called PRIs, coming into the district. And it's kind of riding on old technology. And when that old technology goes down, we don't have that redundancy built in because of the old physical technology that we still have. Once you get into the district, there's no problem. Like the Cisco VoIP system works beautifully. We don't have a problem with redundancy within the system. It's coming in from the outside in that we're having the problem. So I've been talking to both Comcast and another company called Ironton Phone Company to see how they can help us with these SIP trunks, see who's going to give us a better deal with it. And then we will have to do some configuration upgrades to the Cisco VoIP system. So, and that's probably going to be done by E+ because they're the ones who did it originally. So it's going to be easiest for them to come in to do this configuration. Between 50 and 75,000. We don't have the entire scope of work worked out yet. So, but that's what we're figuring. There really should, in the long run, be a savings monthly when we go from the PRIs to SIP. But I don't really have, the one company gave me around $1,000 a month, but I'm not sure yet. So we are looking at some type of savings. I'm just not sure what that savings is going to be. And then the last piece on here is something that I had talked about a year and a half ago. It's time, and I mean it's time to replace our physical storage and our core computing. This is going to be a winter of 2020 project, and we're going to be looking at on-prem versus cloud. We're taking steps right now to but to push some of our user data up to the cloud. So we really should be able to shrink what we need to keep in-house more and more. So that will be brought before the technology committee. Mr. Rice went down to the IU last year, I guess it was, Dave, right? Probably a year ago at this point.
Yeah.
And he actually sat in on a couple demonstrations of some HyperFlex technology. So we're going to have to figure whether we want to go with that HyperFlex technology or we want to just go cloud-based. So it's going to be kind of some analysis needs to be done now. Okay, so that's in there as well for this coming year. But that'll be, like I said, a winter project, not a summer project at this point. So, and now that is the end of my presentation. So any questions on the capital expenses or on anything else that I spoke about tonight?
Nope. Just one comment, Dave. As you know, I'm a fan of moving from physical storage to cloud-based storage, simply because of the upkeep involved. So, yep, I like it. It's all good.
And Mrs. Miller, I just want to thank you for the patience you've shown me in having me try to understand the phone situation and understand why it's not our fault. There was nothing we could do about it until they replaced the lines, and now we can actually do something about it. So thank you for your patience, and I look forward to that redundancy.
I look forward to that redundancy as well. So thank you. I think we all do. All right. Okay, very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we will move on to the general fund budget. Mr. Dahlberg?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Oop,
Hang on, Sean.
okay.
Hang on, Sean.
Okay.
It's her birthday. She can do whatever she wants.
Oh, I
Absolutely.
know. I clicked when I should have clacked. Hang on. All right, here. All right, give it a shot now, Sean. You should be good.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, you guys see the budget? All right, great. Okay, so we're going to talk about the general fund budget tonight. Take a look at what the impacts are on local revenues because of the local economic conditions. So that's going to be our focus tonight. The last time we were together back on, I think, the 23rd of last month for our special meeting, we talked a little bit about the impact of unemployment in the not only in the country and the state, but also here in Bucks County. That we had approximately almost 3,800 new cases of unemployment in the zip codes which attend our school district. And that unemployment certainly has a direct impact on our ability to collect local taxes, such as earned income tax, real estate tax, real estate transfer, and our delinquent taxes. So the next slide is also what we talked about that night, a little bit about the stock market and just the fact that the stock market has a direct impact on future PSERS rates. The rate for next fiscal year was already certified back in, I believe, December, so we are okay for next year. But the stock market issues or crash will certainly have an impact on future year PSERS rates that we will have to pay. So my goal is to tonight is to show you the local revenue numbers in three different scenarios. PASBO, our professional association in Pennsylvania, did a study of all school districts with what they believe the impact on local revenues will be. And they have one scenario, which is a more conservative scenario where the unemployment and the shuttering of the economy drags on. The second scenario is if the economy returns quicker. And then the third comparison that I'm going to show you is try to show you what happened to our district back in 2008, 2009 during the last economic downturn. And hopefully from the three of those, we can get some type of an idea of what could potentially happen to our local revenues if this continues to drag on. This first chart is our real estate tax revenue history. And back in 08-09, we actually had an increase of 2.95%, but that year the real estate rate went up 4.4%. So there was actually about 1.5% reduction in real estate taxes that year. Then in 11, 12, and 12, 13, we had 2 years of actually negative growth in real estate. The millage rate was the same for those 2 years. So what that tells us is that the equation has to be that the assessed value dropped those 2 years. And more than likely what that drop in assessed value was the results of the 08-09 recession and the impact of companies filing for real estate assessment appeals and actually winning and having their real estate assessment values decreased. And then as time went on, the district had to increase millage in order to make up for those losses. And the millage increases then are borne by those folks that did not have a the real estate assessment decreased. And you can see that you can see how we got from 123 mills back then up to our current 135 mills. So the next slide is just a graph of the numbers that you just saw. The bars are the current change from year to year in the tax and the tax revenue, and then the blue line with the dots is the percentage change from year to year for that tax. So any questions on the real estate? Okay. Next slide is the interim real estate. And what you can see here is your interim real estate is really driven by your economy. Interims are the new construction that's going on in the district, and as those construction projects finish up, they are billed for the portion of the year that is left, which is where the term interims comes from. We bill interims every 2 months here in Penridge. Some districts do it twice a year. Some districts do it once a year, but we do it every other month, which gives us a nice cash flow of the interim revenue. Interims also are driven by will be new construction and also new lots that come on, new building lots and so forth that come on. So we've had a healthy increase in our interims over the last 5 or 6 years. And if the the economy goes bad and causes building to stop, our interims will certainly go down. So, and you can see what happened back in the recession. Those interims really declined.
Mr. Gilbert?
Yes, sir.
Before you move on, it looks like there's about a 3 to 4 year lag, at least a 2 year lag until we start seeing that, the effect, right? So in 11 and 12, we had a decrease followed by 12, 13 and 13, 14.
Yeah.
It looks like, when the building slowed down, right, in 08, 09, it took a couple of years for that to work its way through.
It sure did.
Yeah.
Sure did.
And it's interesting when you compare that kind of to our financial situation, because if you look at a 4-year outlook, if you include this budget, we're 4 budgets away from being in a much better financial situation with our debt dropping by $6 million. But, I've seen several different projections now of how much the losses are going to be. It's just difficult because the situation is so different than what happened in 2008. I mean, 2008 was, wasn't a manual shutdown, right? Where those businesses all went away, kind of in a natural way, in a natural recession. And this is kind of a man-made recession that's, for a purpose, but it's a man-made one. And so when they open things back up, the recovery, it's a different situation. It could bounce back faster, but we have no way of knowing that. So it's just, it's important to look at this, but also knowing that the situation is so different that it's hard to really predict what's going to happen. There's so many unknowns and so many differences in this situation compared to the last one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to take all these numbers with a grain of salt because, as you just said, this has all been manufactured as far as the economic downturn, and we don't know what will happen when the switch gets turned back on and how fast everything will come back. Hopefully much, much, much faster than it did the last time. So that's a great point. So the next item to look at is the earned income tax revenue. You can see back in 0809, the district had about a 5.84% reduction when the recession hit. And then it actually took until 11/12 before wages came back to the point where we got back to being above where we were at in 07/08. So again, you see that couple year impact on the revenue cycle for earned income tax, much like we saw back on the other revenue from the real estate, interim real estate taxes. But we have had since then some really nice growth in the earned income tax revenue. And in 18-19, a really terrific year in real estate revenue or earned income tax revenue. And then from the last quarter of this year, what I think will happen, I have that my estimate in there, but this is my best guess for what will happen in 1920. I hope I'm very wrong, but being conservative as I try to be more conservative. So the next one is real estate transfer tax. Again, here's another one that you can see that really seems like was driven down in 07, 08, 08, 09 when the recession hit. And again, as you said, Mr. Cross, you can see it continuing on 10, 11, and 11, 12 with that long-term impact of that recession. Just continued to eat away at this real estate transfer tax. So sales just were down, and they stayed down for quite some time before they rebounded and came back. And we've had some pretty healthy numbers the last few years. And again, my 1920 number is an estimate that basically everything shut down at the with the end of March, and we won't. I'm estimating we won't get anything in April and May. We will get something, but it's not going to be anything like we're used to on a monthly basis. So, because as I understand that the real estate transfers are down considerably because people aren't showing houses, not allowed to show houses, things like that. So the next one, which is all over the board, is delinquent tax revenue history. This one's really a hard one to get a handle on. It goes up and down, and really, this one should work inverse as the economy as the economy's good and earned income tax is good. Means people should pay their taxes on time, which means that delinquent tax revenue should go down because more taxes are paid on time. It also can lag from year to year because people have really a year or 2 or 3 years to pay that until they get into a situation where the county moves to sell their property, where they can get into a payment plan. So this one's very hard for me to lock down on. But in the last year or so, our delinquent revenue has dropped, and that's really a sign that on the other end of that, our real estate tax collection percentage has ticked up. So it makes sense that the delinquent has come down. And honestly, I'd rather get it through the real estate tax collection than the delinquent collections anyways, because that means we get it faster and we put it in the bank, and we can earn some interest on it and so forth. So, and it means that the economy's healthy and people have the ability to pay their taxes. So, and the next item is the investment earnings. You can see back in the recession when the interest rates went down that this line item almost completely went away. And marshmallows. And it's that's okay. It's come back up over the last 4 or 5 years. And 18-19, we had really healthy interest earnings. The interest rates got cut a month or two ago, So we're going to go right back down to those lower numbers until those interest rates come back up again. So the next tab is my best guess at where we're going to end up in 1920 on the revenues. I have the 1920 budget, about 106 million. I have my year-end projection without the pandemic, where I thought we were going to end up prior to this. My projection was about 107.5 million, which was right where we like to see it, between that 1% and 2% positive variance. And my projections with for the rest of the year, now that we've went into this situation that we're in, the real estate taxes are pretty much in and done before anything happens. So we're going to be okay there. Our last quarter of earned income tax, I believe, will take a hit. So I have that factored in. Real estate transfer tax will take a hit for the last 2.5 months. So I've factored that in. Delinquent real estate taxes, we were down this year anyways. And I think it's, like I said, because our real estate taxes are very strong this year. So we were down there. And the other one, of course, is our interest earnings. We were marching along really nicely this year, probably going to match last year's interest earning numbers. And then the Fed cut the interest rates on us. So we're going to see a drop there. So right now, my best guess is about 105.5 million, which is about 777,000 below budget compared to where I thought we were going to be, which was almost $1.2 million above budget. So I think just with those 4 line items, those are the impacts. Hopefully, worst case scenario. I hope we'll do better than that. But that's what it looks like at this point. So now the next slide is taking a look at next year's budget and factoring in what we talked about with the 3 scenarios that I talked to you about earlier. This 2021 column is basically what we have in for our local revenues for our budget, what we've been working with before this impact. This column, statewide estimate, the conservative. This assumes that the pandemic will drag on, the economy will stay shut down longer, and it'll take us longer to reboot and come back up, and we'll have a larger impact. So this is these first 2 are what PASBO did as what we believe the statewide impact will be, and then it was done and then tailored to each school district. We have in our professional organization some great resources and some great minds of some folks that have been doing this for a very long time, and they are a very great help to us for sure.
And Sean, when in that whole report that that PASBO did for across the county, I just wanted to point out that Penridge, the percentage loss was greatest for Penridge over any other district in the county with their projections.
Okay.
I think Central Bucks had the greatest decrease if you're looking at the number, but percentage wise to the budget, Penridge was predicted to have the greatest percentage loss.
Okay. Okay, this first conservative model estimates the highest reduction in current real estate tax, and about a 50% reduction in interims, 17.5% reduction in earned income tax, 40% on real estate transfer, 35% on delinquent taxes, and about 80% on interest revenue. So this one is about 7.6 million, or about 7%. With the faster recovery, the real estate tax hit is smaller. Earned interims is the same. Earned income tax is smaller. Delinquents is smaller. Oh, I'm sorry, real estate transfer is smaller, delinquents are smaller, but the interest remains the same. So this one's about 6.5 million, or about 6%. And we go back and apply our history from back in 08, 09, what the decreases were. We were about a percentage, 1.45% on real estate, 41% on interims. We were 5.8%, much better on earned income tax than what the PASBA model shows. Real estate transfers, 35%, so it's right in the ballpark. And our interest was 60%. So this model shows about 3.9 million reduction, or about 3.62%. But again, as you said, Megan, these are all numbers from a protracted economic downturn. These are the historical numbers, so I don't know what's going to happen.
If you did, you'd be rich.
I am rich in many ways. Okay. Okay, so that's pretty much the local revenue. I have some other things to talk about, state and so forth. Is there any questions about local?
That's a lot of information to digest. And
Yeah.
like you said, you're doing your best to show some possible scenarios. I think the whole point of revenue discussion is that we need to continually be monitoring this year more so than any other in terms of the local revenues as they're coming in month by month, so that we can adjust these projections to get a sense, and to keep ourselves nimble enough that we can react to whatever the economic reality is, will be the key, that we have ourselves positioned so that if in October we know it's going to be better than we expected, we can react. Or if it's going to be worse than we expected, we can react, and not have to make every one of those decisions here today, provide ourselves with some flexibility moving into the fall and the winter.
Okay. Okay, the next area is the state and federal revenue. For the current year, state revenue will be what it was promised prior to the pandemic, and the promise came in the Act 13 when the state required us to make all our payments and continue to pay our employees and so forth. They also guaranteed that the revenue that we were promised before, we would get that revenue. For our basic ed, our special ed, our transportation, they're going to give us our revenue based on us actually transporting our kids for the 180 days because we are paying our employees. So they are going to make sure that our revenues are what they promised us. So that's a good thing. The 2021 state revenues, we are thinking that with the $4 billion shortfall right now at the state level, that and I say we, I mean, our professional organization feels that the state would probably take the federal CARES money and use that to plug those holes in the state budget and try to keep the districts as even as possible. But we'll continue to wait and see what happens with that. And our normal federal revenue budget, we've left unchanged. There's no indication that there will be any difference there at this point before our normal Title I and Title II and so forth. So since our April 14th meeting, there have been a couple of changes that I want to go over with you that I've actually worked into our numbers, and Amy is actually working on the state budget document at this at the current time, because that's the document will actually have to be what we present to you for board approval next week. The state property tax reduction allocation that we use for the homestead farmstead, that's the dollar for dollar decrease. It actually is going to go up a little bit next year, so we're going to see about almost $16,000 more. So we've made that adjustment by increasing that number in our state revenue line and then decreasing the real estate tax for the same amount. Also on May 1st, the most recent property assessed value report came out from the county, and this is the report that we'll use for our tax bills. The assessed values had another increase, which allowed us to change real estate tax an increase about $147,000. We also then reduced interest earnings by $58,000 in order to balance the revenue and expenditure budget at $143,812,026. So with that being said,
Wait, you said that really too fast. So so what you're saying is we have a completely balanced budget, right? Everybody clap.
yeah, revenues and expenditures match.
Obviously, we have a lot of unknowns, but it's good that we again have a balanced budget with no tax increase.
Yes, that's where we're at. I wish I could be happier, but so this is just the state revenue with the change of the state property tax allocation number to 2.5 million, increase of 15,990. And here is the balanced budget of 143.8 million, which is 1.62 change from last year. So we're under a 2% growth from last year. So what we will be prepared for moving forward, we're just going to have to prepare for the economic realities and make changes and react the best we can. Back in March, we had cut or decreased a total of $1.1 million of expenditures out of this budget. If we're not able to open for summer, we'll have savings in our summer bus runs, approximately $200,000. We can also defer some equipment purchases, buses, maintenance equipment, and so forth if needed. There we can save another $500,000. We can also defer some of our maintenance projects that we have set up for this summer, not our capital maintenance projects. These are our maintenance projects that are in the general fund budget. So we can have about another $200,000 there that we could possibly defer. So we have some areas in our expenditure side where we can react if we see that our revenues are coming in short and not do some things. We could hold them off and so forth. From the revenue side, there is some funding coming out of the federal funds that goes directly to school districts, that doesn't go to the state. We've got an estimate, I believe yesterday, that number could be about $472,000, which is a revenue that we can use to plug our local revenue shortage, if we have it. We also have our general fund balance, which right now totals $16.5 million, which is made up of unreserved fund balance of nearly $10 million and $6 million of reserve fund balance for PSERS increases. And we also have our capital funds fund balance, which after we take out the projects that we've done last summer and paid for this fiscal year, and what we've already committed to this summer, we have about $13.3 million left in that fund. So we have a number of different avenues that we can use to react and respond as we see what happens throughout the next fiscal year.
So just to kind of expand on a couple of things you just mentioned, you talked about the $6 million that we have committed for the PSERS fund. So that was set up that was set up years ago, and the purpose was to offset the rise in PSERS expenses. But considering that that is a recurring expense, it was never recommended to use that money for that, because you would then have to make up that difference the following year. And so that's why that money has kind of just been sitting there. And we're getting to a point now with us having 3 years after this budget, we have 3 more budgets to get through until we see the $6 million debt drop. And so now would be a point in time, going forward, if to utilize that $6 million and start to look at the PSERS increases over the next couple of years and use that money proportionally to cap off that increase over the next several years to bridge us to that point. Because then when that drops, we can make up the difference where we weren't in that position before. To be able to do that, we wouldn't have seen a decrease like that where we could have made up that expense in 1 year. And then when you talked about the capital projects and having the 2.3 million that would be left, there's $10 million worth of projects that we've been looking at, capital projects with fixing the parking lots and traffic congestion and all of that. So that's going to be something as well that we can look at and start to evaluate as we go forward and see how this thing affects us. So at least we have some tools available to us in this situation. But the PSERS thing, I think, is something that we'll need to be evaluating probably for next year's budget.
I want to explain a little further the deferred piece and one of the recommendations we're making. We've looked at some of the items that do not need to be decided now in terms of ordering, and are suggesting that we defer them into the fall or early winter and make decisions as to whether we move forward with those purchases at that time based on our expenses and revenue prediction for the rest of the school year. Right. That if we had to wait a year to make some of those purchases, we can do that. And so that's what we're talking about in terms of trying to set ourselves up for flexibility in the fall and early winter, where we do have, thanks to the board's actions and this community and solid budgets over the past few years, that we have a healthy general fund and a healthy capital fund. That we hope that we don't need them, but if we do need them, that's the purpose. You have a rainy general fund for rainy days. And so if we have a rainy day where revenues fall short, there will be funds be able to take that out of general fund to use our fund balance to be able to plug those gaps.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Dolbert, all I can say is thank you for this so far. I know you got 2 more slides, so
Yeah, the next 2 are just simple ones. Here we are on May 5th. So on May 11th, we need to do a vote on a proposed budget. And then we will have to do our required advertising and posting the budget on the website for public inspection. And then we will have to do a final budget vote on June 15th. So it's just the calendar that we have left in front of us. And then this is just the last slide. Any other discussion that anyone would like to have?
I think, as Dr. Bolton indicated, this is quite a bit of data, historical data, and a lot to digest. I appreciate all the work that you put into pulling this together. to educate the board on, where we've been, where we came from, and how we got to where we are today, as well as those things that are stressing the budget. I'll share with the folks here, I had a conversation with Representative Stats today, and he's committed to level funding for education in the next budget. That doesn't mean it'll pass the legislature, but he is committed to it. In our conversation, that was clear to me. So hopefully that comes through, and it'll make your job a little bit easier, Mr. Gilbert.
Yes, it will.
Just a little bit.
And just another thank you for being creative in the way that you and Dr. Bolton and your teams have worked this budget, because with so many unknowns, the fact that you are deferring things the way that you are and waiting to see what happens to make those decisions in the time frame that that makes sense for those projects, it allows us to do the most we can by delaying some of those timelines and budgeting appropriately. And so I think that with this budget, your team has really worked hard to make sure that you've found every creative way to make this a balanced budget and utilize all of our resources the best way possible. So thank you for everything that you've put into it. I know this was a long process on top of dealing with negotiations and all of those other things that were on your plate at the same time. So thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Sorry for moving my computer, but the sky was really pretty, a pretty sunset, so I wanted to show you, but alas.
Does anyone else have anything they wanted to add?
No.
Comments or questions?
I just have one final congratulations. I feel bad for Mr. Harper. Can you unshare your screen, Mr. Daubert?
Yes.
Please. Lost one of the casualties of the closure was us not having the ability to celebrate an amazing award that has been won due to Mr. Harper's work and his department. So we are going to celebrate that at the board meeting on Monday, but I wanted to give Mr. Harper an opportunity to explain and announce the award they won. We were scheduled to go out to Pittsburgh in March.
Yes.
To the PASBO conference where he and his department were going to be recognized, but obviously that did not happen. So Mr. Harper, would you be able to unmute yourself and tell a little bit about the award that your department has won and what the work looked like to receive that award and how rare it is to receive?
Well, I'll try to put something together in my head. I wasn't expecting this explanation, but so it was the PASBO's Facility Award of Excellence. It's something that I've had my eye on for some time. It probably took me close to a year to assemble it. It wasn't like I worked a whole year on it, but trying to find time, amongst other things, to capture data in 7 different regards. It's everything from how you clean buildings to how you manage your asbestos and how you do capital projects, everything that encompasses facilities and how we do business. And there's 2 levels of this award. There's just the standard award, and then there's the gold award, where it's a point system and you have to really score high at this, and meaning that Penn Ridge School District has documented excellence in the way that facilities are conducted, the way we do business, the way we do things on a daily basis. We scored high enough to get the gold award. And yes, PASBO canceled. I was ready to go receive our reward, bring it back to the school district. It was a rewarding and eye-opening process. They actually came and did a video interview of it. Of several people have won it in the state. Out of, what are there, 500 school districts in the state, there's only a small handful of people that even can attain this level of excellence, but Penn Ridge was one of those, and I'm proud to bring the award back to us.
Kelly, the amount of, I mean, I got to see what we affectionately called your baby, which was the binder that he put together to deliver for the award, and just the work and the celebration that is, and the testimony to you and your department. Just, we'll get another chance on Monday, and sorry that I didn't give you a heads up, but I'm giving you a heads up. I want you to give another presentation on Monday, but we just wanted to thank you. And I wanted to recognize you at least a couple times, because I'm sad for you that we weren't able to do that out in Pittsburgh. You deserved that. So congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, Megan, before you close, I have one bit of good news I'd like to share with the board. If that's all right?
Sure.
Excellent. So, for those of you who don't know, my daughter has been applying to medical schools throughout the summer, and she applied to 15 different medical schools up and down the East Coast. She was granted interviews at several, and every interview that she was granted, she received an offer to go to. But today was a special day. One of the big things in her life, she also applied to the U.S. military for a scholarship for medical school, and it's called the HPSP program. She was awarded that scholarship, and today she was commissioned. So she is now second lieutenant in the Army, U.S. Army. So it's all done. She was hoping to hang on for a mass commissioning done by the Secretary of Defense via Zoom, but she was given this option to commission individually, and she took advantage of that. But that locks in everything. So it locks in her commission, it locks in her funding. So I'm real happy.
Congratulations, Bill. That's a huge accomplishment.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Amazing. Wonderful.
I didn't do anything. She did all the hard work.
Here, do you want to say congratulations?
Congratulations to your daughter.
Hey.
Where'd you go?
That's great. Any other good news anyone wants to share? Hard to come after those two. All right, well then I will make a motion to adjourn. Well, I guess we don't need a motion, but we'll adjourn.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Well,
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for